The heat inside She Market was the kind that stuck to the back of your throat and settled behind your eyes. Sector C8's lower infrastructure was leaking again fractured coolant lines. Another tremor, another layer of sweat soaking into Frank. Moore's collar before he even cleared the access ramp. He kept his head down, scanning, one hand on his utility pouch, the other on the console at his wrist, watching for stress fractures in the dome's inner shell. That was his job. Quiet, necessary, mechanical. People didn't matter in places like this, just stress metrics, power stability, and what parts could still be salvaged before someone higher up signed off a sector for abandonment. The corridor forked wide ahead, steam hissing from corroded vents overhead. Frank adjusted his filtration mask. It barely cut the smell. Metal, grease, human bodies pressed too close. The sour rot of old water trapped in low air circulation. The scanner on his wrist blinked yellow structural fatigue was higher than expected. That was the only reason. He pushed deeper, through a threshold where legal vendors thinned and the rot of commerce took root. He didn't want to be here. Not this deep. Shouting rose ahead. Not emergency alerts. Sales. Barking voices, laughter, a different kind of noise-sharp, predatory. Frank rounded the bend, boots clanking against metal grating, and emerged into a circular gallery half-choked in steam and flickering light. The rotunda cages lined the walls, some open, most not. Mesh screens sealed the rest, blue light bathing each one in biometric-ready signals. Each cage was tagged, each body inside assigned a value, a function, a tier. Frank knew the system. Every dome worker did. Black market sales weren't subtle on Hartho 6. They were just conveniently ignored. He usually walked past. He always walked past, but something made him stop. Center display. Spotlight glare. A tilted slab of cold steel, positioned like a pedestal. And on it her. She was chained upright, arms locked above her head in magnetic cuffs that buzzed every time she shifted her weight. Her feet barely touched the floor. Her skin shimmered with an otherworldly violet hue, faintly glowing in places where the heat kissed her surface. Long strands of silver-white hair, matted but ceremonial, clung to her shoulder, tangled with fragments of bead thread. She wasn't unconscious. Her eyes were open pale lavender, dulled from dehydration, but aware, watching. A merchant stood beside the slab, tapping something on a datapad. A subtle hum vibrated through the restraints. Her back arched slightly. Not violently, just enough to make her chest rise. Enough to remind the crowd that she could still respond. That her body still obeyed. A laugh. Frank didn't move at first. His instincts told him to look away, keep walking, file his report, forget this. But her head turned, slowly, not in panic, not in begging. Her gaze drifted over the crowd, past the grinning bidders, the leering buyers. Then it stopped. On him. She met his eyes without flinching, without shame. Like she'd been waiting, her lips parted. The words came out like breath caught in wind. Take me home. Frank's breath stopped. The world didn't fall silent. The crowd still jeered. The auctioneer still barked offers. But for Frank, everything else receded. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't pleaded. She had spoken only to him. He didn't move. His hand lowered slowly. His scanner still blinked green, operational. One touch to initiate transaction. His heartbeat was erratic. Logic screamed at him. Law screamed louder. Don't get involved. Don't own what can't be protected. And then his wrist met the biometric. Reader. A tone sounded. Transaction complete. Ownership confirmed. The cage released with a hiss. The restraints clicked open. Her arms fell. She didn't scream, didn't collapse. Her legs buckled once, then she caught herself. Almost. Frank was. Already there, catching her before she fell. She wasn't heavy, but her skin was damp, cold. Her fingers curled into his jacket like instinct. Her breath was shallow against his neck. "You injured?" he asked. She shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Just tired." He didn't speak. Again, just turned, guiding her away from the rotunda, down the service corridors. No one stopped him. No one cared. Another buyer. Another body moved like cargo. No one saw the difference, but she did. And he did. He didn't save her like a hero. He just didn't look away. Asterisk. Frank's unit was buried 3 corridors west of the main lift shaft, just far enough from public routes to stay unnoticed. Just close. Enough to access maintenance lines without a transit pass. The door read as salvage ops housing. Single occupancy, low priority, exempt from civilian walk-ins. That anonymity had always been a comfort to him. Until now, he keyed in the access. Code, the metal door hissing open with a low breath of recycled air. Inside, 1 bed, 1 wash basin, 1 heater coil flickering near the floor. Gear crates stacked against the left wall, tools in ordered rows, and a cracked mirror hanging above a locked supply panel. It was quiet, safe, cold. She hesitated at the threshold, just 1 step behind him. Not like she was scared, like she was analyzing escape routes. Her gaze moved fast. Walls, corners, vents, window seams. Her posture wasn't hunched. It was defensive, calculated. A woman who had learned the geometry of confinement and never stopped. Calculating it. Frank moved slowly. He hung his jacket on the peg, peeled off his gloves, then bent to retrieve a folded thermal shirt from the lower crate. When he turned, she was still standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the hallway's jaundiced light. "Here," he said. She didn't take the shirt. Not right away. "No rules?" she asked softly. "You're not property here," he said. Her eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, something else. Disbelief, maybe. A kind of silence built into the way her shoulders stayed stiff. "I'm on record," she said. "They tagged me. I'll fix that." She stepped inside then. Just 2 steps. Then she turned her back and let what remained of her wrap fall. The fabric slipped soundlessly to the floor. Just scraps now. Ceremonial threads torn at the seams. Her back was lean. Violet skin marred by faint bruises at the hips. Old restraint burns at the wrists. Subtle scarring beneath the shoulder blades. Her body had been someone's product, displayed like performance art under auction lights. But in this room, in this silence, there was no audience. She pulled the thermal shirt over her head. It hung loose halfway down her thighs. 1 shoulder slipped free. She didn't pull it back up. Frank turned toward the console. His fingers moved quickly over the interface. Registry access. Civil coding overlay. He located her embedded ID. Tag still flagged as active. Asset 5X23B. Pleasure tier, unit bonded, sale confirmed. The system pinged a warning as he opened the override. Unauthorized changes would trigger audit flags. He paused. Then he deactivated it anyway. The tag blinked once. Then dark. Behind him, she exhaled. Not relief. Something quieter. Release. "You just broke civil code," she said. "I know." "Why?" "Because you're not a thing." He turned. Her arms were crossed, her fingers still gripping her elbows, like she wasn't sure how to stand in her own body yet. But her eyes met his directly now. He nodded toward the bed. "You can take that. I'll sleep near the heater." She didn't argue. She didn't ask permission. She crossed to the crate beside the bed, pulled the blanket free, wrapped it around her shoulders, and sat down cross-legged, slow and balanced. The corner of the mattress dipped slightly. Her legs peeked out from beneath the oversized shirt. She didn't pull them in. Frank slid to the floor beside the heater, cross-legged. The warmth seeped into his spine through the reinforced plates of his field pants. He powered on the wrist scanner, checked his logs out of habit. The coolant. Fractures were still active. His job wasn't done. But he didn't move to finish it. His eyes drifted across the room. She wasn't watching him. She was scanning the walls again, tracing the frame of the door, the seal of the vent. Her fingers moved slowly along the blanket, touching it, like she wasn't sure it would stay. "Do you have a name?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. Then her voice came low. "Nyrene." Frank nodded once. "Frank." She looked at him. Just briefly. A flicker of understanding passed between them. Not trust. Not yet. But something realer than anything that had existed in that marketplace of monsters. "I know," she said. Neither of them spoke again that night. But something shifted in the silence. Just slightly. She was no longer a stranger. And for the first time in longer than he cared to admit, neither was he. Frank woke before the light shift triggered in the dome. The room was dim, still pulsing with the low amber thrum of the heater core. His back ached from the floor, but he didn't complain. Not aloud. He lay there for a moment, staring up at the ceiling plate, listening to the soft mechanical breath of the habitat unit, and more quietly, the rhythm of Nyren's breathing. From the bed. It was even. Calm. She hadn't moved much during the night. She was still curled on the edge of the mattress, blanket gathered around her hips, the oversized shirt slipping halfway off her shoulder. One leg was bent, bare foot tucked beneath the other. Her silver hair splayed across the pillow like soft threads of moonlight. He pushed himself up slowly, careful not to wake her. But the moment he shifted, her eyes opened, not startled, just aware. "You didn't sleep," she said. "I did. You didn't move. I didn't want to wake you." Her gaze lingered on him for a beat longer than necessary. "You watched." "Me?" He didn't answer. Didn't deny it either. Her voice stayed quiet. "That's allowed." He stood and stretched, crossing to the sink to pour clean water into a dented metal cup. The air tasted dry, thin from over-filtered intake lines. The dome systems were old. Everything here was old? "You hungry?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, a slow nod. He retrieved one of his ration pack's hydrated meal paste. Basic nutrients, slightly better than synthetic sludge. He slid it into the warming plate. As it hung to life, he watched her shift upright on the bed, her knees drawing up, arms draped over them. She moved deliberately, not cautiously. The way someone did when they were used to being watched and punished for moving wrong. "Where are we?" she asked finally. "My unit," he said. "C8 Upper Western Block. It's flagged for salvage ops, low priority. So the scanners don't flag motion unless I leave the building." "You live alone?" It wasn't a question. He nodded. "No partner. No crew. I contract for the Bureau. Small jobs. Mostly clean work." She tilted her head slightly. "You didn't ask what I did before. I didn't think I had the right." "That?" Stopped her. It was subtle, but her posture shifted. A tiny softening of her shoulders. A flicker of confusion behind her eyes. She blinked, as if recalibrating. "I was a translator," she said. 3 dialects, core tongue, trade crest, and interlink. I worked in embassy halls on Raila Station. He paused. Diplomatic staff? Before the collapse. Before the reclassification programs. Her voice was flat, memorized, legal. They stripped dual citizenship individuals of protective status. We were considered high risk. I wasn't sold for what I knew, just for how I looked. Frank lowered the steaming packet of food onto the crate beside her. He didn't say anything. And she didn't look away. "Do you want me to serve?" she asked. No. Do you want to touch me? No. She studied him. Then, what do you want? He sat down across from her, cross-legged, the heater between them. Its glow flickered across the metal floor, casting her skin in shifting violet light. I want you to eat, he said. Wash. Speak when you feel like it. Stay quiet when you need to. She watched him for a long moment. That's not what most buyers want. I'm not most buyers. Why not? He hesitated, then spoke the truth. Because I didn't buy a thing. I bought time, a window, to keep someone out of that cage. She didn't smile, but she nodded. Just once. A slow, deliberate acknowledgement. Then, for the first time, she picked up the food herself. She ate in silence. Controlled bites, steady hands. But there was something different, now something unspoken. When she finished, she stood and crossed to the wash basin. Frank turned his back, giving her space. He didn't look, but he listened. He heard the water splash, the fabric shift, the hiss of breath against skin as she scrubbed her face clean. And when she turned again, she was damp, flushed, the thermal shirt clinging to her curves, riding high on her thighs. She didn't adjust it. She didn't hide. She sat back on the bed, legs crossed, blanket in her lap. I need to know something, she said. He looked at her. You disabled the tag, she said. That means you're flagged. I know. If I'm scanned again, they'll register me as unassigned. I know. They'll come looking. They won't find you. She tilted her head. You're calm about this. I'm good at not being seen. You think you can hide me? I know I can. Her lavender eyes held his for a long time. She leaned back slightly, letting one leg drape over the other. Her skin shimmered faintly in the heat's reflection. The scars at her collarbones caught the light ceremonial markings twisted by cruelty. She didn't cover them. You know what they trained us to do when we were off shift? She asked. Frank shook his head. Sit quietly. Don't sleep too deep. Don't speak unless prompted. Always look pleasant, but never eager. Don't frown. It looks ungrateful. Don't smile. It looks manipulative. Keep your hands visible. Keep your legs crossed, never parted, never closed. Frank's jaw tightened. You don't have to do that here, he said. She nodded once. Then I won't. The silence that followed was heavy, but not hostile. She wasn't testing him anymore. She was deciding. Asterisk, a low chime echoed from Frank's wrist console, sharp, sterile. He didn't flinch, but his heart tightened as he checked the source. System. Message? Not a warning. Not yet. Just a quiet signal, almost routine. But he knew better. Everything started with routine. He tapped open the interface. Registry notice. Occupant activity deviation. Biometric confirmation requested. Scheduled audit. Unit C, 8:24 hours. Physical verification required. He stared at the message, unmoving. A bureaucratic note. Just another random pull from a faceless system. But it meant everything. It meant someone was coming. With a scanner. With questions. With eyes. He looked up. Nyrene was sitting near the bed, a thermal shirt drawn around her shoulders. Her legs were tucked beneath her again, hands wrapped loosely around her knees. She wasn't watching him. She was watching the heater flame flicker against the metal floor, soft light dancing across her skin. At peace, or maybe just still. Frank swallowed. We have a problem, he said. Her head turned. They flagged the unit. Audit scheduled. 24 hours. She didn't react the way he expected. No panic, no sudden tension. Just a shift. Her fingers tightened slightly on her knees. Her breath slowed. A full scan? She asked. He nodded. They'll expect to find a single resident. Me. They'll cross-check recent utility surges. Water, heat, activity rates. They'll look for consistency. And if they see my tag is dark, they'll know someone erased a registry. They'll trigger a rollback, match activity logs to physical presence. It's not a raid. It's worse. It's clean. I can't override this one. Nyreen was quiet for a moment. Then she rose. Then we go, she said. Frank blinked. Go where? She stepped toward him, one bare foot brushing against the edge of the heater coil. Off-grid. You've mapped the dome. You know which sectors are flagged as uninhabitable. That's not a plan, he said. That's hiding in a pipe, burning ration bars, waiting to die of filter rot. She didn't flinch. You bought me to save me, she said. Let me save us. He looked at her, really looked, not at her skin, not at her face, but at the way she stood, upright, present. This wasn't a woman begging to be kept safe. This was someone choosing danger over submission. He breathed out. What's left if we run? He asked. No job, no access. Every day watching the shadows. She stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. I lived in chains, Frank. I know what it is to wait with no choice. This is better. She reached out, not urgently, not to persuade, just placed her hand lightly against his wrist. I'm not afraid of the dark, she said. I'm afraid of the return. His fingers closed slowly around hers. Then he moved. He crossed the room, dropped to one knee beside the floor panel near the bed, and pulled it open with a quiet hiss. Wires, power conduits, central node linkage, everything tying this unit to the rest of the dome. He pulled his toolkit from the shelf. Nyreen crouched beside him. What are you doing? Severing the connection. Once we disconnect from the system, it'll register this unit as abandoned. She frowned. They won't. Come faster? No. They'll just sit on their vacancy queue. Empty buildings aren't emergencies. He reached inside, twisted 2 lines free. The lights flickered. He severed the last filament, then shut the lid. Every console screen in the room blinked off. No heater hum. No registry ping. No scan signatures. They were off-grid. Frank stood. In the dim, dying light of the heater coil, he turned. Nyreen didn't hesitate. She stepped to the heater, removed the long coat he'd given her earlier, folded it neatly, and placed it beside the crate. She didn't put it back on. She didn't look away from him, Dot. She was glowing again, bare skin kissed by orange light, violet and warm and unafraid. That's it. She asked. Frank nodded. We disappear in 90 seconds. Will they come? Not fast, not soon. She nodded. Then she reached up, pulled at the collar of her shirt. Beneath it, just under the skin near her neck, a faint light flickered. The subdermal tag. Do it, she whispered. Frank hesitated. Are you sure? It's the last part of me they gave. I don't want it. He retrieved the pulse cutter from his kit, small, low power, meant for conduit work. Not surgical, but it would work. He stepped close, raised the tool, and made a careful incision. Just a slice. Just enough. The tag came free. It blinked in his palm once. Then dimmed. He wrapped it in a cloth, sealed it in the waste chamber. He looked back at her. She was standing straight. Her eyes clear. Her body tall. A survivor, not reclaimed, not rescued, but risen. That was the last part of who I was, she said quietly. Frank stepped forward, pulled her into his arms. No hesitation now. She leaned into him fully, chest to chest, forehead to his. No barriers left. And when they lay down that night together, under one thermal blanket, warmth fading around them, there was no performance. No transaction. Just presence. And when she reached for him, when she whispered against his collarbone, it was not need. It was not payment. It was choice. And it changed everything. Asterisk. The quiet inside the room was different now. Not the cold silence of surveillance. or the distant hum of power through steel walls, but a human quiet, a living quiet. Breath and body, skin against skin, warmth exchanged not for duty, but for comfort. Frank lay still, arm around Nyreen, the thermal blanket pulled just high enough to shield them from the metallic chill now creeping into the off-grid unit. The heater was dead. The lights had faded to nothing but the dull ambient glow of the backup, filament tucked under the far console barely enough to cast shadows. Asterisk. Nyreen slept lightly, her body pressed against his side, one leg draped across his. Her face, half buried in the curve of his shoulder, was calm, not blank, not guarded, peaceful. It wasn't trust, not fully, but it was rest. And that, for someone like her, meant something greater. Frank didn't sleep. His hand rested along the small of her back, the weight of her breathing settling into his bones. He couldn't stop thinking, couldn't stop imagining what came next. No ID, no job, no fallback. The system would eventually sniff out the vacancy signal. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, and they would come, not because they wanted her, but because they owned her, or thought they did. He ran a hand over his face and stared at the cracked ceiling. He'd broken protocol, broken civil code, broken bureau ethics. For what? For someone he didn't know? For a risk that wouldn't even register as a blip on the administrative dashboard? No, not for someone he didn't know, not anymore. She shifted. Slightly, her breath touched his skin. And for a moment, he closed his eyes. When morning came, it brought no light. Just a dull change in tone, low environmental chime from the dome's artificial systems resetting the cycle. The external world still turning, still cataloging, still blind to what lived inside these walls. Nyreen stirred first. She lifted her head slowly, her hair tangled against his chest. Her eyes opened, not afraid, just watchful. Always watchful. You didn't move, she said. Frank met her gaze. Didn't want to wake you. Her voice was calm. You watched me again. He nodded. No apology. That's allowed, she murmured. She sat up, pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Her skin glowed faintly in the dim room, lit from within. She padded barefoot across the floor to the mirror, the cracked one above the utility crate. She looked at herself, long, hard, like she was trying to recognize the reflection. He watched her from behind. You okay? He asked. I'm not sure, she said. But I didn't expect to sleep at all. She turned. I don't feel afraid right now. That's new. Frank stood and crossed to the console. Even without full power, his wrist scanner retained local logs. A new alert blinked. Minor flag. Environmental activity detected. Energy usage above baseline. He scrolled down. Routine audit auto-scheduled. Scrubber recalibration. False. The system was starting to notice the gaps. He flagged it as heater coil instability. Masked it with his bureau override. Was that personal? She asked from behind him. He turned. No. System scan. Will they come? Eventually, but not for that. Just a whisper in the logs. Nyreen wrapped the blanket tighter, walked to the side panel, and crouched down. She untied a cord from her hair, a thin wire, stripped and frayed, twisted carefully. Then she used it to bind her loose strands back into a knot, focused and clean. Will you tell me the truth? She asked, always. If they found me, would you give me up? No. Even if it meant prison? He paused. Even then. She studied him for a long moment, then stood and crossed back toward him. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but something deeper. Resolution. You haven't asked what they did to me, she said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I want to tell you, she continued. Because if you're risking your life, You should know what I am. She sat on the bed, legs crossed, fingers clasped tight. They didn't drug me. They didn't beat me. They trained me. Her voice was dry, flat, like reciting something memorized under duress. They broke my identity in pieces. Language first. I wasn't allowed to speak unless it was passive tone. Then they rewrote my routines. Sleep on cue. Rise on signal. Eat only when given. Never before. Never after. Frank sat slowly on the floor. He didn't interrupt. They used touch commands. Trigger response. Gentle pressure to program my reactions. Every time I complied, they gave me warmth. Every time I hesitated, they took it away. She looked down at her hands. They made obedience feel like relief. Frank's hands curled into fists. But he said nothing. It worked, she said, for a while. I stopped thinking of my body as mine. I stopped resisting. But then I stopped responding altogether. And when that happened, they stopped feeding. She met his gaze. That's when I knew I'd forgotten who I was. He moved then, crossed her, lowered himself to her level. Not close enough to touch, just enough to meet her eyes. They didn't erase you, he said. You're still here. She didn't blink. For how long? As long as you want. Her breath hitched, and her voice changed, not trembling, but sharp. You don't get aroused by me? He didn't look away. I notice you. I'm not blind, but I'm not going to use you to satisfy guilt. What if I wanted you to? His jaw clenched. Then I'd wait until you asked me without needing to test me first. That landed like impact. Her gaze dropped. Then slowly, she nodded. That night, she didn't take the bed. She moved the blanket to the floor beside him. No words exchanged. No gesture needed. She lay close, not touching, but close enough that their breaths aligned in the dark. And when Frank rolled onto his side, he saw her eyes were open, watching him in the glow of the dying filament. Not afraid, not alone, still deciding, but no longer testing. Asterisk. The next morning arrived with nothing but silence, and the soft crackle of power dipping through the last remaining circuits. No sunlight, no birdsong, just a faint hum behind the walls, as if the dome itself was holding its breath. Frank woke with Nyreen beside him, this time closer. During the night, she'd shifted, drawn nearer without touching. Her leg now rested, gently against his, her head just inches from his shoulder. He hadn't noticed in sleep, but now he could feel her presence. And she wasn't pulling away. He stayed still for a moment, not wanting to ruin it, not wanting to make her think she had to move. Then she stirred. She opened her eyes, met his without hesitation. You didn't move, she said again, softly. Didn't want to wake you. You watched me? He nodded, a little. She propped herself on one elbow, her expression unreadable. Most don't wait for a reason. Frank pushed himself upright, muscles stiff, neck aching. I'm not most, she didn't answer. Just held his gaze for a moment longer, then sat up as well, folding the blanket around her waist. Her hair fell across one shoulder, slightly tangled. Her skin had lost its sickly pallor. It looked luminous now, like heat and time had coaxed the glow back to her bones. You need clothes, Frank said. Something that fits. She gave a short nod. You want to take me out? If you stay here too long with no registry, it'll flag the unit. Low activity suddenly showing 2 people instead of 1. It'll trigger a trace. She looked toward the door. If they scan me? They won't. Not if we route through the side lifts. The dry corridors. I've watched how smugglers move off-grid. He stood, opened one of the storage lockers, and pulled out a weather-stained satchel. We keep your head low. You walk 2 steps behind me. No eye contact. If they look at you, look down. You've done this before? "No," he said. "But I'm good at patterns." She stood. He passed her a pair of dark field leggings he used as insulation wrap. "They'll be loose. Tie them off at the waist." She didn't ask for privacy. She turned her back and slid the leggings on quickly beneath the long shirt. When she turned again, she was adjusting the hem, checking her movement, testing flexibility. She didn't look like a prisoner anymore. She looked like someone preparing for a job. Frank opened the hatch. They exited into the service corridor just before the work shift rotation, when most crews were still between cycles. Vents hissed overhead. Steam curled up along the floor in slow rivulets. They passed through access ramps and pressure doors, moving like shadow figures between malfunctioning lights. Nyreen kept pace. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. They reached a requisition kiosk tucked behind a sanitation sector. Wall filthy, flickering, forgotten. Frank scanned his band. The console blinked, then spoke in a flat, metallic voice. Select clearance level, civilware, thermal gear. Medical issue. He picked 3 items. Pants, undershirt, long coat with fiber lining. The kiosk groaned and dropped the bundle. With a hiss, he didn't tell her to change there. He guided her 2 blocks away to a cracked section of wall blind. Corner, old rail line, abandoned since the last quake. She stepped behind the panel and changed. When she came out, she looked different. The coat added weight to her frame, not mass, but presence. The pants fit better than expected, and the shirt hugged her torso cleanly. She'd tied her hair back with one of his old seal cords. Her gait was measured. Her chin stayed down. But she didn't look hunted anymore. She looked like a woman reclaiming shape. Better? Frank asked. Warmer, she said. They took the long way back. Nyreen walked 2 steps behind him when other workers passed. Her hood stayed low. Her eyes tracked movement, but never made contact. Once inside the unit, she pulled off the coat and laid it carefully across the crate. Frank returned to the console and tapped the water log. 1 spike already logged from the day before. He masked it under maintenance routines. Bought them time. Not invisibility. Nyreen sat on the edge of the bed, hands in her lap, staring at the floor. You haven't asked what they did to me, she said. Frank froze mid-motion. I didn't think it was my right. You're wrong, she said quietly. If you're risking your life for me, then you should understand what I am. He turned. She looked up at him, her fingers tight on her thighs. They didn't need to beat us, she said. That's the thing. They had a system. Pressure, praise, silence. They trained us to anticipate touch, to find safety in structure, to feel guilty for wanting anything outside of their routine. Her voice didn't break. It was too steady for that. But her eyes, those pale, luminous eyes, were dark with memory. They taught us how to smile without hope, to speak without meaning, to lay still and say thank you after. Frank sat across from her. Not close, not yet. Just near enough. They made obedience feel like safety, she said. She inhaled, chest lifting slightly. And when I stopped responding, they stopped feeding me. Her voice went quieter. That's when I realized I'd forgotten who I was. Frank said nothing, just sat there. His silence said more than words could. I don't want to be that thing again. She said, You're not, he said. You don't get aroused by me? I notice you, he replied evenly. But I won't use you to erase my guilt. What if I wanted you to? He didn't blink. Then I'd wait until you wanted it. Just for you. Not as a test. She stared at him, then down. Then. Slowly, she nodded. That night, when the heater pulsed its last glow before sleep, Nyreen moved her bedding. She placed it beside his. Close. Not touching, but no longer apart. The end.